on me. Mid-tree, and I'm doing this kind of damage. Okay, here we go. 6 heat waves, 7, 8, 6, 8 heat waves, 4 thermal bombs. And this is game. You can't move this time. 1, 2. Here we go. Oh my god, we almost did it! What do we get? What do we get? What do we get? That was so cool. What's going on, guys, gals, and gamers? My name is OOTIKTAKOO, and welcome back to another important video for the dead game. I don't care. I don't care if it's dead. I'm still having fun, especially when we make stuff like this, because this build is absolutely fantastic, and hopefully we'll get some content in the future. Speaking of things in the future, right here, right there, rather, this thing right here, Advanced GG is 15% off with code RTT on checkout. If you guys want to check it out, it's fantastic. I highly endorse it. I drink it every single day. It's really, really good if you want to check it out. But today's video is going to be a quick dive into the best, and I'm saying that with confidence, the absolute best solo Pyromancer build in the game, period. Nothing comes close to damage, survivability, and AoE that this build brings. Recently, we have some buffs, and something that got buffed was Phaser Beam, and a combination of certain mods that not many people are using makes this build better than anything I've used. It's not as fast as the Ash Blast build, but you also will never ever die. So with that being said, let's jump into the build, the video, and some examples. This is your absolute best solo Pyromancer build. Let's get into it. So where do we start? I think we start with the class tree, and then we'll talk about the mods. The 3 skills we're currently using are Heat Wave. We're using Phaser Beam because it hits like an absolute truck right now, and we're using Feed the Flames. This I'm not 100% sure on, but I was playing with this build for 6 hours straight yesterday. We tried many variations, and this seemed to be the best, especially for solo play. There is a variation, and I'm going to tell you about it, change 1 or 2 mods out for group play, but for solo, and I know a lot of you guys still play solo, this is the hands down best Pyromancer build in the game. I promise you. Our class tree, we are actually running a middle tree pyro. That is why it's so good for solo play, because you have almost 30,000 health with this build. And if you wanted to, you wouldn't lose out too much if you take Master of Armor and Resistance instead of Gifted and Meltdown, increasing your resistance by 20 and armor by 20%. It's very strong, very tanky. It feels great. So why are we using a mid-tree? Mainly for this capstone here, Magma Elemental. This gives us a ton of armor piercing, remember that, and resistance piercing. Normally, armor piercing doesn't do anything for us, but we have a special mod in our build that you have as well. It's not a tier 3 mod or anything like that, that absolutely makes this build hit like a tank. It's better than the bottom build. You get maybe 100,000 more damage with the bottom tree with all of these anomaly nodes, but you lose out on all of your survivability, all of your bonus armor. Trust me, I played with it for 6 hours yesterday, and this is the best of the bunch. So since we're using Heat Wave, we grab the warm-up cooldown. We grab another 10% cooldown. We want our cooldowns to be as short as possible. We grab Distant Flame for all of these health nodes. We get 2.5% anomaly power for each one. We get Skill Life Leech to keep us up because our skills are always up. We have Anomalous Lava, which is important, and we'll touch on it once we get into the gear, because this ends up giving us about 200,000 armor and 10% resistances, which makes us be able to do a lot of damage, especially when we're sitting still casting Phaser Beam. Then we have Fuel the Flames, which just lets us heal a lot more. 1 Phaser Beam in any direction will basically full heal you, especially if you're low. Then we have 15% damage if they're burning, more cooldown reduction, and then Magma Elemental. Again, armor and resistance piercing. That's important. We'll get back to it. We have Incinerate here. This is just for some crowd control. We're going to be lighting the world on fire, and then when the world stops being on fire, they become frozen in ash, which is very helpful. Then up here, we have Hot Situation. This is why we're using Feed the Flames, because it's a shorter cooldown. Ash Blast without the 66% range on it is kind of meh. I tried that build too, and the cooldown at 17 seconds just is a little too long. The Feed the Flames cooldown on my build specifically is about 7 seconds, allowing us to get 45% extra anomaly power at all times, considering the cooldown 7 seconds and this lasts for 10. So that is why we're using Feed the Flames. The other variation of this build is you would come down here, grab these nodes here, all the way down to with Fire and Anomaly. You have to skip out on Trial by Fire here, and then you use Overheat with the build, or Thermal Bomb. But I didn't like this build nearly as much, especially for solo play. I know you guys are still getting one shot. I haven't been one shot in a day and a half. No bullshit. I swear to God, you could watch it on stream. This build is ridiculous. On top of that, like I said, the damage difference between going bottom tree and middle tree with the build we have is literally like 7,000 anomaly power. That's it. That's all we're missing out on. So why is this build so good? Let's get into the armor. We are currently not even really using a death shield. I mean, we are, but we're really using the Wicker. The reason we're using the Wicker is because armor piercing and status power and skills life leech. It actually has all 3 mods that we really, really want on it. We stuck Fortress on it because we are an AP build, and the armor piercing and status piercing is actually really important. Remember this, we'll touch on it in just a second. Then we have just, of course, Moaning Winds with Fortress and Moaning Winds with Clip Combustion. Both of these is, mandatory almost. Not really. I barely use it. You'll see at the end screen stats. But I know how strong Moaning Winds is. I'm not going to be lying about it. It is what it is. But the reason we're using the Wicker, again, is because it has armor and status on it. So why is this build, a middle tree build, doing the same amount of damage as a bottom tree build? Well, the reason is, and this build isn't perfect, there are 2 mods I would like to change. I just don't have them. The reason this build is so strong is we are using 3-piece Akari, which gives us a ton of anomaly power. You do not need, I repeat, you do not need the chest piece for this. I was running, or the pants, or the chest, either one. It doesn't matter. You just need the set bonus. You can have a max health roll. Your scaling's ridiculous anyway. It really doesn't matter. So if you have the helmet, which you can get from Tiago, a pair of pants and the gloves, just mod off what isn't usable to your build and you're using it for the 3-piece set. That's really it. What we have here is Helmet of the Kari with Damage Absorber and Fire Tsunami. Damage Absorber is the mod you take away if you're playing in groups. But the thing is, while you're playing in solo, this Damage Absorber makes your armor at 104,000. Then when you use this node right here, it doubles the 104,000. Well, 45% more. So without that node, we end up at about 80,000 armor. With Damage Absorber, we end up with 170,000 armor, which is a decent amount, seeing that our damage reduction is almost 80%. Change this mod for either burn damage, or I've been playing around with Ashen Champion, which is a phaser beam mod, or cooldown reduction on your phaser beam. Those are the 3 I recommend changing it for. I usually keep either cooldown reduction on your phaser beam, or I keep 20% damage to burn. In fact, I have the other version of this because I was testing all day yesterday. This for solo play is unsurmountable. It is so good. You stay alive so long. Oh my God, it's so good. Then we have Armor of the Akari, and we have Unstoppable Force. Another mod that you have because Tiago sells it on the gloves for the Pyromancer that he sells. So you definitely have this mod. Increase your anomaly power by 50% of your resistance piercing. Remember the class tree. This gives us 45% resistance piercing whenever we use this skill. You'll see here that we're currently at 148,000. Every time I use a heat wave, we shoot up to 205,000 anomaly power. That's without the Akari set bonus. It gets up to close to 1 million. I think the highest I've seen it is 970,000. Then here we have the Waist Claws of the Akari with Anomaly Echo and Burnout. Very basic stuff here. Here is another thing that you want to change. Your gloves or any piece of armor that you can fit it on, you want status power if you're using Phaser Beam. Phaser Beam, it says in the skill tree that it scales off of your status power. It gains 210% of your status power. So you really want status power on any purples that you may be running or any Akari set that you can fit in. Status power is important here. Pure power, on the other hand, is not important here. I do not want this mod. It's just the best that I currently have. The only 2 or 3 phaser beam mods that you really want are size matters and cooldown reduction. That's really it. You do not need this 48,000 bonus damage. You scale way high enough. You don't need it. And I would replace this for anything else you want, like Captain Hunter or something along those lines, if you have a better rolled pair of gloves. Then my boots have Hellfire, again, something that you don't need, but you see we have status power on these as well. I really like Hellfire when there's big groups of enemies, 1 or 2 heat waves, and they're insta-dead, but it's not mandatory. I would replace this if I had a mod if I had a piece of gear that came with no resistance against the Fortitude, and I can change off the other mod. The reason we have no resistance against the Fortitude is it because it increases your resistance piercing by 50% of your armor piercing value. Again, we come down here and this gives us 45%. We get 50% of that. So it gives us like 25% extra resistance piercing. You guys can see in the clips here that I'm almost one-shotting Broodmothers. I one-cycle really any boss in the game without Moaning Winds. It doesn't matter. This build is tanky as hell, hits hard as hell. I promise you, if you're having issues on a Pyromancer and you cannot survive solo play and you don't like to group with people because, let's be honest, the matchmaking in this game is kind of shit, this is the build for you. I promise. Try it out. I've hit for 33 million damage with a phaser beam and almost one-shot Dr. Disrespect or Dr. Dementor, whatever the hell his name is. I promise this build is fire, pun intended. Try it out. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. I love you. I'll see you on the next one. TikTok out.